Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unicode seminar. Yay! Thanks for joining. We have an in-person audience, and we also have an online audience that's tuning in. So if you are in the live chat, feel free to drop engagement there, and we will pick out the fun things and relatable things to what's being presented, and we will talk about them, especially good questions or good thoughts. We have a lot of content, a ridiculous amount of content and code for you. It's quite ridiculous. So we're going to start it off. This session is labeled "What is Unicode?" because we are, of course, paying a tremendous respect to the existing Unicode, that is what allows everyone to see clearly on the internet. But we're going to be enhancing that in our own way. So you'll get to see us pay a deep respect to the existing Unicode and what that is and how it works across our devices and how it allows us to see text and emoji and all kinds of things like that. But we are going to be taking it to a new level regarding the nature of consciousness and the maps that it uses to render its reality. So I see we have some beautiful God rays going on right now in the video, which is fantastic. It's, of course, what we love to see. And all right, so we'll jump into it. You'll see the breakdown of what these next couple of days are going to look like, and you'll see the different sessions that are going to be happening across those days and what they'll be covering. And let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm so excited it feels like I'm lifting up my skirt and you're joining me right now, and it feels amazing. So come on in. Let's play. Okay. So we have Unicode, and it's important to say right at the start that Unicode means one code. So it's an encoding standard for reality description languages or reality description sets. So think about things like science and spirituality, physics, philosophy, healing, gaming, AI, art, etc. So instead of thinking about it as an endless amount of different codes or an endless amount of different ways of seeing or ways of rendering reality, which I'm sure we're very familiar with, people tend to have their interests and they tend to speak about their interests in that specific domain almost all the time. And sometimes it's quite difficult to integrate these seemingly irreconcilable domains. But quite frankly, they all belong to the same source, which is you. And what we're doing with Unicode is we're proposing that all of these languages, they all belong to that same source, and they're just different reality rendering. That's it. And we actually know how to tie insights that are happening across these seemingly different domains to one another, which then takes us to a beautiful, essentially exhaustion of you seeking what you are and coming home to yourself. So, you look over here on the left, and what you see is a graphic that has the Unicode transformation, and that is so UTF-8 is basically the most commonly used internet encoding standard, character encoding standard. And below you see it says what allows languages, numbers, symbols, and emojis to display correctly across all devices and software. So, for example, if you, and I'm just using these as the most common maps because, you know, Arabic reads from right to left, and Mandarin uses logograms, and every single one of those, when you open it up, it has to appear on your phone or on your computer or on whatever software that you're using to open it up. It has to appear. It has to decode and be visible, like if you see a Mandarin logogram that's being sent across the world. So otherwise, it shows up as mojibake, which we'll get into in a moment. But nowadays, 99% of the internet uses this same encoding standard, and it's what allows an emoji to be sent from a device in Europe that may be using different software and hardware then a device in Brazil might be using different software and hardware, but that same little heart emoji that's sent from Europe to Brazil, that it will be able to be seen in whatever program it's opened up in instead of show up as a question mark. So it's how signal is transmitted between portals. So a portal being consciousness, or a portal being your computer or your phone. And so it transforms bits into coherent characters across all devices and programs to correctly interpret the same Unicode characters. So now we will take you into how what we're seeing that the Unicode, which this is kind of taking Unicode beyond what is already fantastically doing what it's doing for the internet. And now we are saying that this is applicable to consciousness. This is applicable to infinite consciousness. This is applicable to God. This is applicable to, well, like we say, the vacuum's encoding standard. So it's what allows portals to understand across maps. So, for example, you typically think of, oh, well, there's no way that something that happens in a spiritual transformative experience has anything to do with economics. But it absolutely does. It absolutely does, because the more that you heal and the more that you wake up to the reality of non-separation, the more that you drive forth a regenerative, holistic economy. So it's these types of things that we're sharing is possible to be able to speak about and to resonate on moving forward together. Whoever's interested and resonates with this is a decentralized effort that we're going to be building this out into the world and helping it harmonize us into one code. And so Unicode is the map of meaning itself. It's the universal lookup table. So UTF-8 encodes how the bytes are transmitted, and Unicode defines what each byte sequence actually means. So we'll get to that in a second. The vacuum manifold functions as an ontological Unicode, a shared field of meaning that makes all domains interoperable. So very briefly, what I'll say about a manifold is that it's an atlas, which is just a collection of maps. So you have a collection of maps, and that makes up a manifold. And then what you can do is you can do calculus, or you can do differential work, transformative work across those maps, across code points on those maps. And then that's essentially changing the quantum state of consciousness, which we'll get to more in a little bit. So yeah, if I say something like, quantum gravity is reconciled through consciousness, and then we say that, touches on the same meaning that Christ's crucifixion does, or that Buddha's speaking of emptiness does, that's what we mean by we're making all these domains have a shared field of meaning, that we're having them be interoperable and communicable. So if you don't have Unicode, what you get is you get what's called mojibake. So it means you get garbled character transformation between the maps. So everyone's familiar with this, because back in the early 2010s especially, you would get messages that had that were from softwares and hardwares from around the world, and you opened it up and you couldn't, even if someone had an emoji from a previous set than yours was, or on a different software than yours was, it would come up like this mojibake. So we're familiar with it, but it's now being phased out of our culture and our collective more and more, because everything is Unicode. Everything's able to, you can pull up whatever it is that was sent to you, and you send whatever, and it can be pulled up over there. So what happens when someone tries to translate physics into mysticism without a shared metaphysical standard? We're all very familiar with that. Or what happens when someone tries to translate mysticism into physics without a shared metaphysical standard? So a most common example is when an observer portal doesn't have Unicode access, spirituality and science are deemed irreconcilable, producing mojibake, and incoherent transformations of truth. So when an observer does have Unicode access, they very clearly see how spirituality and science are reconciled, and it allows you to speak from that place and to harmonize from that place. So when in reality, all maps are to be reconciled by the same source. So whether a friend is writing in Arabic or Mandarin or English, UTF-8 ensures that every character displays correctly, no matter what device, country, or software. And what we're saying, how we're evolving that, is we're saying that whether a friend writes or speaks in physics and spirituality and economics and art and AI and healing and whatever they speak in, Unicode ensures that every single manifold code point is understood, no matter what portal, no matter what lineage, no matter what ideology. So that's where we're going here. So this kind of further plays on what we said earlier. Remember when an emoji from your friend used to show up as mojibake? That was pre-Unicode alignment. So UTF-8 now carries those characters flawlessly across all systems. And remember when a concept from your teacher used to show up as a question mark, whether a differential manifold or superposition cone or a regenerative economic model, that was pre-Unicode alignment. Our encoding format now carries those concepts flawlessly across all systems. Because here's the thing, all of us are very familiar we are very, very, very familiar with when we first were seeking and we would hear something about, oh, there's a regenerative model too we could use for society. What the hell's that? Or, oh, what do you mean that consciousness is a singularity? There's no separation. What does that actually mean? It showed up as Mojibake, and the Mojibake, it spectrumed out over time. It gradiented out over time. It stopped showing up as garbled information, and it moved more and more towards pure clarity of understanding. So that's why now we understand why certain observer portals, they have Mojibake experiences, because we came from that same place. So you understand the whole gradient from Mojibake to Unicode once you come all the way home to yourself, let's say. So this is, we were getting to this a little bit earlier. So what science calls the vacuum, what Buddhism calls emptiness, what Christianity calls crucifixion, what Taoists call the Tao, what gamers call simulation VR, what physicists call holography, what AI calls procedural generation. Your classical consciousness will look at this and be like, this is Mojibake. I have no idea what is being said. But someone who is firmly rooted, a portal that's firmly rooted in Unicode, will clearly see the invisible thread of connectivity between all of those things that are describing what the source is and how it works. So if this doesn't make sense, it shows up as Mojibake, which just means there's no Unicode. But over time, it should show up more and more clearly for you that based on the intensity of your seeking, essentially, based on the intensity of how badly you want self-knowledge of yourself, self-knowledge of God, self-knowledge of infinity, right here, right now, in this exact moment, you will pursue exhausting all of these different reality description sets so that you can see that common core invisible thread that ties them all together at the source. So, another great way to say this is that, like, I love this example, because you take the English glyph, well, you take the meaning of the number 7, but in English it appears as this glyph that looks like that. But in Arabic it appears as this glyph that looks like that. And in Chinese it appears as a glyph that looks like that. So the glyph is varying, but the meaning is invariant. So meaning the glyph of vacuum or holography or crucifixion or emptiness or procedural generation, the glyphs all vary, but their meaning is fundamentally invariant. So Unicode is assigning each glyph a unique code point, and it shows how they all map to a universal reference. Right? So each one of those glyphs is going to still have its own unique code point, because that's how, when you go inward into finding that about yourself, it still has to have a unique glyph, a unique code point, but it's also now showing how they all map to a universal reference. So you need both of those things. You need the unique code points of the glyphs, and you need the meaning, the universal reference underneath of them. And you obviously also need the transformative ability to, which we typically just refer to as contraction and expansion, to make it really simple, that there's a pathway. We'll get into that later, but there's a pathway as consciousness contracts itself, and then there's a pathway for consciousness to expand itself. So the scientist's vacuum, the Christian's crucifixion, the Buddhist's emptiness, the physicist's holography, the gamer's simulation, the AI's procedural generation. The glyphs are unique code points, but their meanings map to a universal reference. This is Unicode. So the reality is this one slide can basically right now point you to how you can exhaust many different reality description sets into yourself as consciousness, as infinity, as God, just right here and now. But you really need to exhaust all of those reality description sets in order to get to the fundamental fact that their meanings are mapping to a universal reference. Because everybody knows that there's religious war is the most archetyped. So that's what happens when you take a glyph and you have that glyph fight another glyph. But those are actually, that unique code point and the other unique code point are pointing to a universal reference. So, yeah, that's why there's been so many people that have tried to reconcile how Buddha's teachings and how Christ's teachings are actually pointing to the same universal truth. And that's been just such a commonly, it's basically been beaten to death over the years, the fact that, we'll go to war over what appears to be different things, but they're really pointing to the same fundamental thing. And I've joked around about this a lot and talked about giving virtual reality headsets to your favorite insert here religious figure, and we all know what the response will be. Wow, exactly. Look at this. What a cool reflection. Okay. And you can even give the VR that same thing to your favorite insert here physicist, and you'll get the same reaction, which physics is slowly having to clench. It's unclenching. Physicists are unclenching their anuses right now, because their anuses are very tight with materialism being real and fundamental, and they're having to unclench right now, and they're going through a whole crucible, basically, with unclenching and allowing a harmonization with consciousness to take place. So even though the local glyph varies, and I must say also, even AI and virtual reality and simulation technology and video game technology are also forcing society to go through an unclenching of our attachment to materialism. So it's quite fascinating, all of the reflective technologies and reflective advancements in wisdom and self-knowledge that are currently happening, that are all pointing to that reality is a rendered hologram out of consciousness. So even though the local glyph varies, the meaning in the vacuum doesn't. So it's an invisible thread through the manifold. So for example, Buddhist shunyata, or emptiness, and physics vacuum holography are two local encodings of the same Unicode meaning in the vacuum's ontology. A physicist without Unicode awareness, i.e. who hasn't realized the underlying code of consciousness, reads shunyata as nonsense. That's mojabake. And obviously the same thing's true as the opposite. If a Buddhist practitioner and deep realized scholar has not any understanding of physics, they will also believe that vacuum holography is mojabake. Someone with Unicode mastery recognizes both as renderings of one invariant truth. So even though the byte stream differs, the meaning ID is the same. So I must also say that, and I should have said this a little bit also at the beginning upon starting, but it's important to remember that this entire seminar, Unicode, everything is pointing to that this is an ongoing developmental process. This is like an ongoing effort to explain exactly what we're pointing to and make it more and more clear and all of that stuff. So it was quite intense trying to put this all together, and there will likely be mistakes, omissions, all kinds of things in here, but we will continue developing this over time and making it more and more clear and better. So UTF-8 is Unicode transformation format, and that's 8-bit. And in July 2025, almost every web page is transmitted as UTF-8, somewhere around 99%. UTF-8 supports all 1.1 million code points using a variable width encoding of 1 to 4 1-byte 8-bit code units. So an emoji is a 4-byte code point, whereas like an English normal character like A or something like that is a 1-byte code point. So that's how it was done by this incredible standard of encoding, and and that's what what allows that, you know, that 4-byte emoji to show up all across the world, across all different softwares and hardwares. Unicode is proposing a differential manifold of code points to describe the nature of the observerse and how it renders reality. And we'll get to why we're using observerse, and we're actually, you know, making more of a shift into observerse, or, you know, consciousness, observerse, because normally we use the word universe. So code point maps, or reality description sets, or RDS, include things like science, spirituality, physics, philosophy, healing, gaming, AI, art, etc. So each one of those is a map in the manifold. And the reason why it's called a differential manifold is because you can do math or do calculus or measure change over time of the observer and its quantum state, which is what those code points are. The code points are the observer's quantum state. And so when things change in that differential manifold of maps, like it stops being Mojibake so much and it starts to be clear seeing, that kind of thing. So this is a decentralized effort not owned by anyone. It's analogous to the internet. So if you ask the question, who owns the internet? What's the answer? Nobody and everybody, right? So same thing with, who owns Earth? Nobody and everybody. So this is the same thing with what we're doing. This is an effort that's being pushed forth by nobody that's being everybody right now, which is consciousness. So Unicode is a unified syntax standard defining the rules of form, which is the grammar of being. And Unicode is also a unified meaning standard. So the vacuum defines the ontology itself, so what all forms mean underneath. So it's a unified standard of ontology and form. So another way to say it is that those code points across all those maps, they are actually the fundamental rules. The quantum state of the observer is the fundamental rule of how its holographic reality gets rendered. And also the meaning that's underneath of all of those code points is what Unicode also provides. It provides that universal reference frame, that invisible thread across the maps. So one way to look at it is if you put all of those maps stacked up, and then if you turn the book kind of, on its side in a way, that's one way to do it, right? So you have all the layers of the book, but then you turn it like this, right? So at the bottom you have the source, the observerse, and then you have all of those maps, right? Like this, right? Science, spirituality, physics, AI, blah blah blah. Then how you can see that is the more that you get to the code points that are closer to the spine of the book where the observerse source is, that's where you stop seeing Mojibake. That's where you start seeing that invisible thread that's connecting all of those most profound realizations across all of those disciplines that we were talking about. But when you stay all the way out here in these code points, not only do the other stuff look like Mojibake, but also you start arguing with others because you say that my reality description set is better than your reality description set, and now I'm going to commit violent acts against you. Yes, thoughts so far? Yeah, go ahead.
Getting down to Unicode then is, it's almost like you can see it as the most compressed. Well,
Yeah, right. It's like, yeah, right. It's, yeah, but, and that's beautiful because the question was about, this is like Unicode's the most compressed. That's a great way to say it because when you ask, and this will show up later in the seminar too, when you ask what people who are trying to make a theory of everything are trying to do, they are basically trying to compress everything into the least amount of things that then give rise to absolutely everything. Yeah. And that'll show up here in a little bit, and it's funny what I say about it. I basically say that anything that doesn't follow that principle, you should just immediately throw out. Yeah. So, and I mean, more and more as you gain greater mastery of Unicode within you, mastery of what consciousness is within you and all of those reality description sets, you start to vibrate at such a level of clarity that anything that's happening in the reality description sets that's further away from the source, those code points, they just no longer resonate with you to such a large degree that you literally just, God bless you, you are a reflection of me, Godspeed, and you just let them be because it's you. But you don't vibrate near them because your vibration just is so transcendently awake to how everything works and how stuck or contracted that viewpoint is of you, which is, beautiful and perfect exactly as it is. But that's an important part of mastery, is truly learning how to gracefully bow out of contracted viewpoints. Because the last thing that you want to do is to take your massive expanded energy and be sitting in, divisive political violent dialogues while you're sitting here vibrating as an infinite unified consciousness. So that's when you gracefully bow out, totally understanding where they're at and where they're coming from, and then you go off and build regenerative infrastructure, or you do your thing that you're, yeah. And then over time it'll be clear. The discernment becomes so clear because this will show up in the sessions on consciousness is the root and on shamanism and recoding. But the discernment will show up really, really clearly. So, because it will be obvious when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I really want to learn how you see, and I want to apply it to my life because I want to stop suffering so much, and I want to see clearly the non-separate nature of things. I want to build from that place, that kind of thing." Yeah. I want to feel it in perpetuity, unshakably. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. So the vacuum is a unified encoding standard of reality. So we've obviously heard that the vacuum is not empty, but it's seething with potential. And so the notion of infinity in God is the fact that it's creative. And it's creating in a way that is a holographic rendering way, which is what your current experience is. So, and we'll get to that more in that session. But so it's a unified encoding standard of reality. So all worldviews, maps are decodable through its meaning. And unification isn't a belief, it's an encoding problem that's literally solved by consciousness. Yeah. Yep. And mastery of consciousness is then fluency across all these encodings. The moment that you have fluency across all these encodings, every word that's said never appears like Mojibake, and it's like always, it's always showing up as a, like a, what's the, it's, you know that those little like panels of little tiny LED, like little diodes that are, right? It's little lights, right? It show like the quantum state of the observer that you're talking to once you have fluency across all encodings, it's just showing up as a bunch of like little light diode pulses, their quantum state. That's basically what it's like, because essentially you're seeing which code points that observer is channeling in that moment, which is just you, but you know. And so at that moment you can clearly see what they don't have access to versus what they believe reality is. So yeah. And then depending on how badly they want to come back home, which is a very deconstructive process, then they can gain more access to a deeper mastery of this infinite well that is themselves, that is source. But yeah, that's sort of how I see the nature of words that are being communicated. Is there each one of them is like vibrationally buzzing, and I'll get to this. It's called the EMR, electromagnetic radiation, is the same thing as an electronic medical record in the health industry. So yeah, so basically you can tell the health of the observer, you can tell the quantum state of the observer based on those vibrational musical frequencies that are being spoken to you in that moment. Yeah, it's kind of it's pretty cute because you know you it's cute in the sense that it, like when you hear the words and the words are like they're like they still like to talk like the observer portal that you're listening to, like it still kind of occasionally talks about political things, but it's also really trying to understand how everything's a unity and that it wants to build new regenerative models and that it wants to care more about that, but that it's still being constantly baited by propaganda and baited by others in conversation into that. You can tell those in that little quantum state diode panel thing, you can tell each, like its little struggle between going between like orange frequencies or yellow frequencies versus trying to come into green and blue wavelengths or frequencies. You can see it's fascinating when you start framing it or seeing it in that way versus when somebody is just pure black white. You can just, every single word is all integrative of everything, fluency across encodings.
It's like thinking that all of the other spectrums of light don't exist.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Which that's why the common trope goes something like, I'm right, my political party or my ideology is right, and yours is the fucking worst. And I have no problem with committing acts of violence or hatred against people like you.
See you when you're
Yeah. But it's exactly the way that consciousness wants to play with itself. This is exactly how it wants to play with itself in contraction.
yeah, to orient itself. And,
Yeah. Um, Correct. Yeah, the only way that it can grow is by contracting into a all kinds of experience, pain, trauma, sufferings, all kinds of separations, and then growing back inward into itself, expanding back into itself from all of those things. So Unicode as a software protocol that's facilitating cosmological revelation. Mojibake mirrors the loss of coherence, so when the encoding is lost. Enlightenment is cross-map comprehension, so the vacuum is the Unicode of being. So when the vacuum Unicode is known, you get a clear coherence across maps, and when the vacuum Unicode is lost, you get Mojibake, you get confusion, and you get war. All right, I could probably spend 10 minutes talking about this. The portal's quantum state bootloaded with Unicode. That's what we're talking about. So gravity is the observer, which is the portal. And its quantum state being bootloaded with Unicode is what gives it the feeling that it's always been wanting, which is absolute clarity of itself and what it fundamentally is as source, and also exactly how its rendering works, which we'll get to that too. So you want your portal to be bootloaded. You want its quantum state to be bootloaded with the Unicode.
So it knows exactly how to be useful.
Yeah. Yeah. It has a full all integrative mastery over what it is as infinite consciousness, and it knows exactly how to be most useful, surgically precise and useful. And we'll get to more of that. We have a lot more to talk about the nature of the quantum state of the observer and how it's rendering its reality. And honestly, it's not the first time that that's being said. I mean, cubism or quantum Bayesianism is really deeply, intricately tied to that as well. And we'll talk about this later. It's basically we're gonna integrate all of the primary interpretations of quantum mechanics into and enhance them into this manifold understanding of what you are and how you work. So interoperability is the ability to receive signals correctly. So seeing shunyata instead of seeing garbled mojibake. And it's also, so this is Unicode, it's also translation. So it's the ability to contextually interpret those signals, which is then understanding it as emptiness. And then the Unicode mastery is about, both together. So direct perception of the invariant meaning beneath all appearances. So you don't want to just have interoperability or to just have translation. You want to have both. And you want specifically to be rooted at the invariant meaning beneath all glyphs, apparently varying glyphs.
What do you mean by direct perception?
Yeah, the question's about what do I mean by direct perception. So the fundamental nature of the source is perception, and then the consciousness. And then that, when I say direct perception, I mean rather than having it be a something that still comes from some sort of outsource, let's say, something like that. So a direct perception would be it is absolutely clearly, unshakably rooted at your own core, fundamentally, that's how your quantum state is perpetually vibrating in that way. And versus if it's like an indirect perception, it's still kind of like, well, I still go to my priest and my priest still helps me with healing my wounds. Or I still heavily lean on this physicist who I believe is a good communicator. Or I still, I heavily lean on, I lean on the Fed. I lean on the Fed to dictate to me that this is how inflation should work and this is how interest rates should work and that I'm fully bought into that system. Versus when you have it rooted yourself, there's a direct perception, which we'll get into later, which is that you can deflate the consumer price index and you can deflate the fundamental nature of basic needs and therefore free consciousness. So, yeah. Yeah, again, this is another one of those big ones that I could spend a lot of time on. But a portal bootloaded with Unicode can decode truth across paradigms. It has all of the pathways compressed. It knows the orientation of everything, yes. Yes. It perceives that all deep order code points, so vacuum, emptiness, crucifixion, simulation, are all cross-map reflections of the same ontological thread. So the invisible thread at the source that's connecting the most sourceful code points across those reality description sets, each one of those reality description sets has a most sourceful code point that must be found, remembered, integrated, and connected to the other reality description sets for full exhaustion of self-realization. So one way to see that is that when you put the spine of the book of the manifold of the atlas up like this, and then you have all those different maps. Once you start going down to those most sourceful code points, and you find that and you remember it and you integrate it, then you want to find the same most sourceful code point, the same meaning in the other map. So it's going to be a different glyph, but it's going to be the same meaning. And so you want to go and find that one because you want to exhaust and you want to integrate and you want to fully remember and fully find and be completely self-realized. So exhausting truth across all disciplines into a single atlas. So that's what we mean when we say those most sourceful code points, deepest down, right? So those are those deepest fundamental truths of each map that are all connected by that invisible thread, that exhausting those gives you that clear self-realization. So it's some sort of like a cross-map code point model. So a manifold of all interoperable meaning, and it all links to a holographic vacuum that's forever dreaming.
So if you think of it like just folded out in a flat book, it's creating the whole hologram.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like a pop-out book. Nice, yeah. Nice, that's great. So if you take that book and you do that and lay it out flat, and then, based on whatever quantum state that consciousness is vibrating at, then it's rendering that, popping out a little hologram for itself to look at and experience. So, yeah. So it all depends on what, the projector of consciousness, right? What code points it's projecting through that atlas, what code points it's projecting through. That's what makes its little rendered hologram. No, yeah, they're always fluctuating and shifting and transforming, always, always. Because even when you clearly hold a Unicode mastery, we talked about this a little bit yesterday too before we did started the seminar, just that, when you go out to golf with your friends, that you can either be going out to golf with your friends in order to try to validate yourself in the eyes of others, which are just reflections of yourself by being such a good, best golf, or you go out just in a pure neutral flow state of being excited to golf with all these reflections of yourself in fun and joy and yeah, still being great at achieving and whatnot. But so you can seemingly render the same experience, but the difference is the subjective feeling of that consciousness in that moment, which is, it's because its quantum state is different, but the experience, so the area of the quantum state that says golfing is the same, but the area of the quantum state that says I'm trying to get validation from others versus I'm not running that software, versus I'm in a non-separate field with myself. Yeah. So, yeah.
Emotional meets environmental in regard to dominating what your quantum state is.
Yeah, well,
Like it has a greater effect on your. Well, yeah.
absolutely. Yes. So that you could even say that the level of entropy, which we'll get to also, but the level of entropy that the observer has, an entropy meaning a measure of disorder, but in this sense, we're also using that same thermodynamic measure in physics, we're using it to describe the level of how contracted consciousness is versus how expanded it is, which is negentropic. But so that's the primary thing that dominates the observer's experience. So in its quantum state, the primary thing that dominates it is its level of entropy or negentropy. Its thermodynamic state is the primary thing that dominates the quantum state of the portal. Then secondarily is what it's like, if it's golfing or if it's, hanging out with family or if it's taking a shit or whatever it's doing, So, yeah. So, yeah, that thermodynamic thing is unbelievably powerful because basically it's when you're taking a shit on the toilet, you're pooping, you can be thinking, I hate this other person because this other person, right? So versus you can be thinking like this other person is actually me and it's a reflection of me and there's a unified field between us. And so it's a total feeling of easing and relaxation from any of those contractive entropic, literally letting go of your shit in this perfect example. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So good. So each reality description set speaks its own dialect of truth, and then Unicode awareness hears them all as one. So a portal bootloaded with Unicode can read all realities without Mojibake.
Everything is useful.
So what is Unicode? Unicode's one code. The subject of conscious awareness and the objects of things depend on one another for existence. Unicode is you. And you remember in that very first graphic right at the beginning, introducing the seminar, the Unicode is in the shape of a U, and you have the I, the source of consciousness, and then you have its holographic rendering, what's appearing, right? Materialism is trying to tell you that one side of the U is real, and idealism or obsession with consciousness is trying to tell you that everything that you see is completely fake. That's also imbalanced. So the real reality is that consciousness, even though everything that's appearing in front of it is a holographic rendering, that holographic rendering is what that consciousness is. Yeah.
It's the art.
That's the art. It's the art component. The rendering component is the infinite creative artistic component of it. Yeah. So even choosing to be completely, on a mountain in total silence and away from all of society is in fact still choosing to render the experience of being on a mountain away from society in silence. Because, you'll also still have to go and drink water or eat or whatever, and then you'll render the experience of drinking water or eating or whatever. So you'll never get away from rendering experiences. It's just what infinite creation is. Infinity itself has to be this way. There's no way to go into not being infinite, basically. Not being infinite creation. There's no way to go out of being infinite creation. Yeah. So, and that's what's in this next graphic, the same thing. So what is Unicode? It's one code, and talk about all of the following ideas that you heard, but talk about them empty of the channel. They belong to you. Okay, so here's our 3-day schedule. So day 1, we're going to talk about theoretical physics and cosmology. Day 2, we're going to talk about consciousness and shamanism. Day 3, we're going to talk about civilization and regeneration. So what does that look like? So the first part is how reality works. So that's the physics. Then we're going to talk about how the observer transforms, which is consciousness. And then we're going to talk about how transformation becomes civilization and why when you do incredible inner transformative work, it leads you to building a regenerative future. So again, another way to say what we're going to do with the 3-day schedule is that we're going to go from stillness to creation. We're going to go and understand the awareness of transformation, and then we're going to realize and get how vibration makes all manifestation. So another way to say it is we're going to work on the foundations of reality, we're going to work on the inner technology of transformation, and then we're going to work on collective coherence. So here's another way to say it that I really like. I posted this for those who were interested in what the seminar was going to be about. So theoretical physics, studying the nature of the vacuum as a double slit, collapsing, rendering holograms. Shamanism, teaching how to make transformations at the root of consciousness for healing, non-separation, and lucidity. And economics, proposing deflation of CPI, the Consumer Price Index, your basket of goods and services, your basic needs, using AI, robotics, and regenerative models to maximize mental health and well-being of society. So if you were to, say, what am I up to or what am I obsessed about? What is my quantum state? This is what it is. So let's do an exercise. So when I say the vacuum is the double slit, and this will lead us into the session 1 of day 1. So we'll take a break and then we'll come back to this. But let's do the exercise. So the vacuum is the double slit, turning potential into something. So we're going to do this exercise, and this exercise everyone's very familiar with because we all know what it feels like when, let's do it together. You close your eyes really hard, and then we know what this feels like because we do this all the time. We start rubbing our eyes, like if we're tired or if we're just waking up or whatever. And you start rubbing your eyes, and it's like you get this like fractal, holographic, like waves and pulses and light show and all this stuff, but it doesn't have any meaning or orientation or rendering at all or anything. But then you open your eyes, and all of a sudden you get this geometry. Everything's geometrically shaped, and it's pure light, and it's purely perfectly organized, and it just all comes to form. And so that's the collapse. That's the rendering of that infinite potential that you were just in. This is the rendering of it. Your direct experience is the current rendering or collapse of infinite potential. So we'll get into that in the quantum mechanics more.
Into the what does the
Consciousness,
yeah
the observer. Conscious is the one that's turning infinite potential
turning it all
into this.
into this
Yeah.
and how it's powered.
And how it's powered. Yeah. And it's the very power that's doing it too. Yeah. It's the power of the potential. It's the power of the collapsing. It's the power of the rendering. It's the power. It is the all. It is that. Yeah.
And every form comes from the light of the mind.
Yeah. 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 It was that what was said was every form comes from the light of the mind. So think about it this way, and we'll get into this in a little bit too, the spinorial nature of things too. So that experience right there, that exercise right there, if you take that exercise, gosh, it's such a beautiful, the God ray right now on the stream is showing, yeah, it's just showing up as this beautiful God ray right across the stream. And you know what's really nice about it is that it plays perfectly into literally this exact section we were just talking about. So that God ray, that is consciousness. That's the holographic vacuum, is the God ray. The God ray emanating whatever the rendering is in the moment. And, here it is. And the God ray shows up as, look at that frequency band. It's perfectly right there. The rainbow frequency band is right there in the stream. And you know how infinite perfection does. It always infinite perfects like this, perfectly. So that frequency band is exactly what we were saying earlier. It's the measure, primarily the measure of entropy. So if you're channeling out of that quantum state, the red and orange frequency bands, it's going to be very contractive. It's going to sound like war, violence, hatred, ego, greed. If you're channeling these blues and purples and this white source intelligence, it's going to be unbelievably harmonious and unified. And yeah. Gosh, the stream looks so damn good with that right now. Okay, so then this is giving a nice little glimpse into this next session. So the vacuum is creatively, holographically, probabilistically rendering. Because those are your main words. So what do we have? Creative, we have holographic, and we have probabilistic. Rendering and holography are pretty much the same, but it's creative. It's the purest form of art imaginable is this. This is the purest form of art. It comes directly from you for whatever use you want. Yeah. So this is the highest form of art, is God, is infinity, is consciousness now. And it's all holographic or rendering. Okay. And it's probabilistic in the sense that we'll get into this more later, but let's read the next sentence. A gaming console cannot render multiple timelines on your screen. This is what we're calling the no code display principle. We're basically evolving what Niels Bohr was calling complementarity. This is the 100-year anniversary of quantum mechanics. We're evolving it because we're calling it this no code display principle, which we'll get to in the next sessions. But because Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr basically came up with the fundamental nature of quantum mechanics, which we will, and its relation to gravity as the observer, we'll get to all of that later, which is now our evolution or our take of it. But again, the nature that you can't actually render. Like I can't render right now. Just let me give you the most practical example. I'm here doing this. I'm not eating lunch at a restaurant. It's just very simple. You can't both be eating lunch at a restaurant and be in this conference room. You can't be doing both at the same time. You have to be rendering one of those. So just similarly, I talk about this in later, but location, career, relationship, those are three of the main ones of no code display. Like if you're coming from another city to be here right now, you can't be in that other city and be here at the same time. And the same thing's true with you can't be in a specific career path and be in another career path at the same time. Not from a single observer portal. An observer portal is always rendering a timeline. And it's not exactly a timeline. It's more of just a rendering out of infinity all the time. But it can't code display, which we'll get to that later. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but because it's so rich later. But the gaming console analogy is really good too, because when that character is walking around, you can't take the video game character in that moment and you can't split it into doing one quest and then going off and doing another quest in that moment. Like I can't be both here and in the restaurant eating lunch at the same time. So what I'm saying is that when you're rendering a game in the console, your character, the camera, the character, the source of light, the terrain is all the same holographic as this. But that's how the rendering of the console is rendering what's appearing for that camera point and the avatar that you're playing in that moment. Yeah. We're gonna get deeper into this no code display thing. We're gonna get deeper into it, and because it's not, we got to remember the no code display thing. It exists at the same time as the many worlds. Yeah, infinite potential. So it's not that, and again, we're going to get into this, but it's not that many worlds is right and Copenhagen is wrong, or Copenhagen is right when many worlds is wrong. It's that both of them exist at the same time. They're describing different facets of how infinite consciousness works. That's what they're doing in physics.
It's still part of the hologram. We're just here in this way.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. Okay, now I want to spend because we basically ask for where the answer is. That's basically what seeking is, or what the desire for self-knowledge is, right? That's basically what the question is. Like what's the answer? Like if I'm the answer, what am I? Like what's going on, right? So anyway, I wrote the word gdzia, which is a Russian word. It means where. That's what gdzia means. And it's very, it's a strong, like, where, but it's stronger in a way. For me, it's like, gdzia, like, where is the answer, right? It's this feeling of, like, where is the answer? And I'm going to get to this in a second, because it's not in the places that you think it is. So we'll get there in a second. So there isn't an answer is the wrong philosophical answer, because there is a physics to how you work. There's a physics to how consciousness works. And there is an ultimate how it works if you dig deep enough. So gdzia, men and women especially struggle with conditioning. So the common tropes go, I wish everyone could get rich so they could realize the answer isn't money. I wish everyone could be famous so they could realize the answer isn't fame. I wish everyone could be hot so they could realize the answer isn't looks. So I ask again, where is the answer then? Where is the answer? Right? And the answer is in frame. That's where the answer is. The frame is quantum state. That's where the answer is. So the answer is in frame. So it's not money, it's not fame, it's not looks, which is mind-blowing. It's all a result of the frame. So if you can hold the non-separate vacuum holographic frame, you win. You are the infinite source rendering whatever. And reflections come to you for healing, for awakeness, for whatever. And this is so counter to everything that we've been conditioned. It's so counter. Yeah. Yeah. It feels so good because you know that you don't have to invest any more of your energy, your time, your attention, anything into those things that you finally realized were not the answer. Yeah. Yeah. The whole of society, the whole nature of consciousness in how it loves to contract, it loves to pitch quantum states. It loves to pitch the quantum states that are money, that are fame, that are being hot as fuck, going to the gym and getting fit, now, so watch this. This is also crazy because the more that you put the programming in your head that I need to be a billionaire or I need to be a trillionaire or whatever, the more that you find the more that you contract yourself into believing that separation is real and that I can take whatever advantage I want to get that billion or trillion or whatever. So it's the very thing that keeps contracting and inflating the economic system and driving people away from holism and driving all of that. So yeah, so it feeds into itself. The quantum state being, I need to find the answer in money, in sex, in drugs, in substances, in traveling, in fame, in material, anything like that. You're generating a constant feeling, a background hum that is, I'm not whole, I'm anxious, I want wholeness out of something, I'm not wholeness creating this. So anyway, that's a deep thing for consciousness as the root. We'll get there. But frame specifically, I love this word. I've been more and more passionate about using it because the way that those little LED panels shows up of diodes and frequencies and whatever's being emitted by the quantum state of the observer at that time, it is showing its frame. It's showing its frame in that moment. It's saying my frame is the red wavelength. My frame is the green wavelength. My frame maybe one day later because I apologize to the person that I transgressed. Now my frame has turned a little bit more towards blue from green. Do you see? So what I'm saying is that that frame is constantly the fundamental component. The observer, you'll see this in a little bit. The observer portal, like we did in that exercise, is holding a frame. It's holding a frame, which is determining its holographic rendering. It's holding a quantum state. It's rendering a quantum state. So,
How much light it has.
yeah. About how much self-knowledge it has, which is, how much light it has, But that's that right there, to realize that you're not actually looking for the answer in all of the things that you've been conditioned into believing. You've conditioned yourself. You were never the victim. You were always the creator of the fact that you conditioned yourself into believing that the answer was going to be in all of those things. And then you have the most hilarious possible realization, which is that it has always been right here in me all the time about what the answer is and how it works. Now I need to hold this frame in perpetuity that keeps me free, my frequency vibrating at being the infinite source of truth, and also being completely whole in perpetuity, vibrating that, gravitating reflections of myself towards me because they also want to feel that and deconstruct the assumptions that are running in their quantum state space that is creating those illusions, and then we co-create from that completely clear, pure, non-separate place. Yeah, we just co-create the beautiful future from that place together.
And by understanding the Unicode, we can then figure out how to hold the frame as infinite source and as a human being.
Yes. So the question was, by having deep Unicode mastery, that we can hold both simultaneously, being infinite source and being the portal of the human body experience. And yes, absolutely. You'll notice, within a little, all of us are already noticing, hey, I would like to get up and stretch my back. That's the beautiful balance of being the infinite source and also channeling it through this beautiful body portal. Yeah. And that's why we go to the sauna and the steam room and we massage our fascia. You take all these little contractions and you start massaging them, and before you know it, you start, oh, that feels so good. I didn't even know that I had that going on there. And then, you show others that you're with that you can massage into all these places. So I like a deep part of my integration with the body portal is fascia massage. I love fascia massage and how it stimulates further expansion, because the contractions are also stored in the actual physical body and vehicle itself. So when someone is Anyway, let's just put it this way. I've talked about this before. Fascia stores contractions, and if you massage and liberate those, you can feel deeper expansions inside of yourself too. Yeah.
It stores whatever contraction, whatever type it is, in a corresponding part of the body.
Yeah. Yes. So it stores contractions in corresponding places in the body based on the type of contraction. Yes. And all of this stuff is deep ancient practices that have been practiced for a long time that we're integrating. So, all right. So the point of the presentation, the point of the Unicode seminar, master what you are, master how you work, and master how you causally root everything. You want access to the inside of the console and how it renders. That's what Unicode is. That's what mastery of yourself is. Yeah. I was asked to go back, so we're looking at master what you are, master how you work, and master how you causally root everything. Awesome. So, yep, you want access to the inside of the console and how it renders. And now we're going to get into, this is coming to the end of the what is Unicode session. So this has probably become perhaps even my favorite acronym. It's also the very first video game console that I ever had, which, of course, of course it's fitting. So if what is being said is not Sega, if it doesn't follow the principles of simplicity, elegance, generality, and abstraction, then throw it out. It's just not worth your time. So Sega is basically saying it should be compressed to its absolute source and it should originate everything. That's what Sega is saying. Compress it to its absolute source and have it originate everything. That's when you have source code.
Like a viable seed.
Like a viable seed. Yeah. It has to follow the Sega principle.
Can you elaborate on what elegance means?
Yeah. Totally. And you, exactly. You know? So if in here vibrates out an oak tree, right? Which then makes more acorns and which vibrates out more oak trees, right? What I'm saying is that you can find this for consciousness, which vibrates out any reality experience. That's what we're saying. You can find the this of consciousness that vibrates out all reality experiences. That's what it is. That's what source is. Yeah. Perfect use. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Yeah, so that's the end of the first the intro section, let's say, that's called what is Unicode, and then we have a second a next section that's coming up, which is technically the first section. I'll come back to these in a second. So yeah, so day one, session one is coming up here, and that's again on theoretical physics and cosmology. And the session number one is going to be on vacuum holography. So that's where we're going to go here in a little bit. We are going to end this stream and we are going to take a lunch break, and we will be back with that stream here in a bit. And we want to thank our event sponsor, Guaranteed Community Advisors, Trusted Advisors in Sustainability. And you can scan the QR code there or click the link in the bio or the description. And that will also take you to the page that can take you there. We also want to thank our room sponsor, Integrity Tax and Business Advisors. Same thing, you can scan that QR code, go find out more, or also follow the link in the bio. And we want to thank you for attending the Unicode seminar. And we have a suggested daily donation, $33, $66, $111, whatever resonates for you for the amount of value that you feel like this is bringing to your life. If you want to help support the Unicode effort and all of our implementation of the Unicode and our building of regenerative infrastructure, light cities, and catalyzing more transformations in consciousness across the world. So you can scan either of those below. There's one for PayPal and there's one for Venmo, and then that's again on the web, the link in the bio too. Okie dokes. So we will go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks everyone for tuning in from wherever you're tuning in from, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments below on how that session landed. So drop us a comment down there, and we will be back live with this session in a little bit. So keep an eye out. All right. Thank you, everyone. Much love. Yeah.